they're going to call him a linebacker, and Howie's just going to be like, "Look, I finally spent on a linebacker," and we're like,
you're
"No,
right.
Howie, that's not. This doesn't count." And they're going to try to put him in that box. And we didn't let him do it when they drafted Marcus Smith because no, he wasn't a linebacker. And I'm going to take a stand here with Howie too that no, this does not count.
Does not count.
When you try
That's why you have to say, you said it right, Dave. Off ball linebacker, off ball Howie.
Exactly.
That's what we're talking about.
Appreciate you streaming on in here on Birds 365. Like, share, and subscribe while you're at it. And do so because we brought you a great guest. He jumps on with us every couple of weeks. We always appreciate it when he does. You follow him on NBC Sports Philadelphia. Dave Zangaro jumps aboard with us here on Birds 365. Dave, out of the gate, Philadelphia Eagles. Would you call Haason Reddick a splash signing?
Oh, yeah. I mean, absolutely. He's been a really good player the last couple of years in the league. He's an explosive pass rusher. Whether they call him a linebacker or an edge rusher, whatever they want to call him, he's an explosive player. And he's the kind of explosive player the Eagles haven't really had in recent seasons. So, yeah, it's definitely a splash signing. And honestly, the money isn't astronomical. We saw some of the contracts yesterday. And they were pretty wild. This is it seems like a pretty good team-friendly deal until we get the details. And even then, I'm sure it'll still be really team-friendly.
Yeah, usually when you get the details, it'll become more team-friendly, Dave. So not concerned about that part at all. But I am playing the bad cop here. Jody's the good cop today. So I look at Haason Reddick, and he's a very unique player. 6'1", about 237, tweener. As you mentioned, now Jonathan Gannon has sort of talked about this type of player. He's verbalized this type of player. I assume he's going to be sort of a hybrid Sam linebacker, edge rusher. But I look at how they used Gennard Avery in limited situations last year. I don't want him to use Haason Reddick like that. And then, Jody was bringing up Ryan Kerrigan playing out of position, whether it's 5 technique at times. I don't want him playing like that. Any concern about the fit in utilizing a unique player? This is a pass rusher. I don't want him chasing tight ends. I don't want him chasing running backs. I don't want him, hey, go hold up that edge and run support. Any concerns there?
Yeah, I mean, well, they have to use them correctly. And honestly, the beginning part of his career, he wasn't used correctly in Arizona. I mean, they drafted him as an off-ball linebacker, and it clearly wasn't his fit. And once they moved him to a role where he could rush the passer, it was much better, and he did that obviously really well in Carolina last year. I think enough of Jonathan Gannon that he won't use Haason Reddick the same way he used Gennard Avery.
I hope so.
You would think so. And the shocking thing here is that they had Gennard Avery in that role last year. If this role is potentially this important in Gannon's defense, how in the world were they trying out Gennard Avery, who wasn't bad last year, but he certainly wasn't worthy of playing a ton. And so it's on Gannon now to really figure out how to use him. And I agree with you. I look, at times, do you drop him in like a zone blitz type deal?
Yeah,
sure. At times, you can do that with anyone. But I agree with you. He has to be a pass rusher predominantly, and I think he will be. I don't think you sign a guy like Reddick who has 23 and a half sacks in the last 2 years and say, all right, go cover Dalton Schultz. Like, that doesn't make sense to me, and I can't imagine that's what the Eagles are thinking. You're right, though. I mean, they have to figure out the correct way to use him, but I also don't think you sign him unless you have a pretty in-place plan about how that's going to go.
Right. And I got no problems with if Jonathan Gannon uses him the same way he used Gennard Avery last year. You know why? He's not Gennard Avery. That's the key element here. Not necessarily, how he's going to use him, how he's going to situate him. How about the talent of the player can make it work, whereas they tried to get Gennard Avery to be able to do it. He's just incapable of doing it. So, yeah, I'm putting
the
a lot
thing
of
that
faith
annoys
in,
me,
in
guys,
the DC.
is that they're going to call him a linebacker, and Howie's just going to be like, "Look, I finally spent on a linebacker," and we're like, "No,
right.
Howie, that's not. This doesn't count." And they're going to try to put him in that box, and we didn't let him do it when they drafted Marcus Smith because no, he wasn't a linebacker. And I'm going to take a stand here with Howie too that no, this does not count.
Does not count. Yeah,
when you try
that's
to
why
say
you have to say you said it right, Dave. Off ball linebacker, off ball Howie.
Exactly.
That's what we're talking about. But we had Rob Bonney on yesterday, Dave, and he mentioned, if the Eagles were going to make a splash, it might be an edge rusher. And there was a lot of whispers about Chandler Jones, and that would probably cost far more money, and he's older. And that's not sort of the Eagles' mentality in free agency to go after those older players. But it did turn out to be edge rusher more than safety, wide receiver. I'm kind of kicking myself for thinking it would be safety. In hindsight, this is sort of like the Eagles' ethos. Let's go at a position we value. And as you mentioned, you can call it linebacker, but it's edge rusher.
Yeah, and look, we'll see what they do at safety. I think there's still a chance. Some of the guys are gone. Justin Reed was the one I really had my eye on. He's off the market. You're right, John. But the thing I looked at was like this draft is a really good opportunity to get an edge player, so you can get him for cheaper. But then you look at the Reddick deal. I mean, it's cheap enough that it could have changed their minds about how they were going to handle free agency. Because, I mean, 3 years, $45 million. Look, it's a lot of money in like real people money. I don't want to like discount saying what $45 million is, but when you look at pass rushers coming into free agency, that would rank 17th in the league in edge rushers. Think about it this way: Josh Sweat during the season, when no one else had a chance to bid on him, got a 3-year, $40 million deal. So his APY is $13.3 million. Reddick's is 15 with a much more impressive body of work. He has 10 more sacks in the last 2 years than Josh Sweat. So they got him for a discount. They really did. And I even if that wasn't their plan, getting him at this price for whatever reason, whether it was some sort of hometown discount or I don't know why, but that could have changed their minds too, especially if they're looking around the league saying, hey, we want to sign a receiver. And then they see some of the receiver money on Monday and they think, well, maybe we don't want a receiver that bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I wanted to go to next because Kirk got the unbelievable deal he did and just had everybody, wait a minute, Chris, how much for Christian Kirk? Just within the last 25, 30 minutes, DJ Shark, a name that's been thrown around a lot here in Philadelphia, has signed a contract 1-year deal with the Lions, $12 million. Now, I thought he was going to get more than a 1-year deal, but if you can get $12 million for 1 year, you take it. You go back into the free agent market again next year. A bunch of wide receivers, the Cedric Wilsons of the world. We thought Michael Gallup was going to resign. All of a sudden, there's not much left on the table at wide receiver. Will the Philadelphia Eagles use a first-round draft pick on a wide receiver for the third consecutive year, Dave Zangaro?
It's possible, but it was possible before. It's still possible. It's a position they value. And I don't think they can't look at it and say, well, we've used a first-round pick the last 2 years and that we can't do it this year. That's not a functional way to run an organization. You can't worry about your past misses if you're looking at
whoa. You're talking about the Philadelphia Eagles here. You can't worry about your past misses. Jalen Reagor's still on the team, isn't he? There's a past miss that they continue to give shots to. They have a track record of making decisions by where a player was drafted previously.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is if you're going to run an organization, you can't let that Jalen Reagor miss prevent you from drafting a first-round receiver again. That would be bad business. And I don't think it will. Like, I think if they're on the board, and look, we'll see how many first-round picks they end up actually using. I still think it's in play, but I still think there's a good chance they sign a receiver in free agency. I don't think that ship has sailed. Chark was an interesting name. It was a 1-year, $10 million deal, which isn't bad for him. I think back to, the Eagles in 2017 gave Alshon Jeffrey a 1-year, $9.5 million contract. So we're talking about, 5 years later, a younger player who has more upside, that doesn't have the resume, but has more upside, is getting a similar deal. That would have been something I probably would have been in on if I'm the Eagles, because they can spread it out. They can limit the cap hit.
Yeah.
But now you look at the names that are left, Juju Smith-Schuster, there's been a lot of smoke there. And knowing what we know, how they feel about Quez Watkins, it does kind of give them some flexibility when you look at the receiver position, because they like Quez. And they're going to play him next year. It just matters where. He played out of position last year in the slot. I say out of position because I still think he's an outside receiver. But him having the ability to play both kind of frees up the Eagles to say, all right, let's just find a receiver. If it's a slot guy like Juju Smith-Schuster, fine. If it's an outside receiver like Allen Robinson, fine. Even though he's probably going to be out of their price range. I think that's the way they can handle this, because they have Smith, he's going to be outside. Then they have Watkins, who they can move inside or outside. So you get the next best guy, you plug and play, and you go from there.
If the next best guy turns out to be Zach Pascal, what does that do for you, Dave?
It doesn't do much for me, but it does a ton for Nick Sirianni. I'll tell you that. He'll be dancing through the streets. Hey, you know what? If these prices for the receivers end up being as bad today as they were yesterday, and in a free agency, we look back and we go, man, everyone overpaid for receivers. If the Eagles want to wait and sign a bargain bin option, you might as well sign the bargain bin option the coach loves, the coach trusts, that when he throws on the teaching tape, he can have the guy in the room and say, hey, this guy did that. I'm okay with that. I don't think it's going to move the needle much, but it's better than nothing. I really do think they need a veteran in that receivers room. It's so young right now. Even Devontae Smith not that long ago admitted that he would benefit from having a veteran in that room. And that, honestly, if you're Howie Roseman and you hear Devontae Smith say he would benefit from having a veteran, that's all I would need. That's all I would need to make sure it happens. So if it ends up being Zach Pascal, people aren't going to be excited about it. He's a fourth receiver, honestly, but better than nothing.
If they're going to stick with their quarterback, and I want to ask both you guys a question about Deshaun Watson in just a second, but before we go there, if they're going to stick with Jalen Hurts as their quarterback, which seems to be the direction this whole thing is moving, aren't they obligated to get better than Zach Pascal? If you're going to take the stance that we'll get better pieces around Jalen Hurts, we're dealing with an inexperienced, only 1 year as a starter and a limited resume. Don't you have to give him more weapons? Zach Pascal, really? Just because Nick Sirianni likes him and can smile when he talks about him in a press conference? Eagle Nation is going to accept that, Dave?
No, I just said they won't. I just said it'll make Sirianni happy and no one else. But you also can't give a deal out like we saw yesterday to Christian Kirk. It's the kind of deal that can really hamstring a franchise. It's too much money for a guy like that. And like I said, I still think they're in on some of these other receivers. If I had to pick the most likely, I still think it's Juju Smith-Schuster, who would be a nice signing. I really think that'd be a solid signing for a guy who's still really, really young. He came in the league really young. And like I also said before, don't rule out a high draft pick. And it doesn't mean it's a first rounder, but there's a chance they can still draft a receiver. So I get that. Look, we're less than 24 hours into free agency. The sky is not falling here. Yeah. We've seen some incredibly expensive contracts, and this is not a one-day event. So I get the fear here, but there's a long way to go.
And last year, the Eagles tried to get Juju, and for whatever reason, he decided to take the 1-year deal back in Pittsburgh. And I kind of want to expand on that because the biggest story, obviously, is Deshaun Watson, who is you know, John Clark at NBC Sports Philadelphia, Derek Gunn here and other places, Dave Zangaro. I'm sure the Eagles, everybody knows the Eagles have been paying close attention to Deshaun Watson. Now, all of a sudden, after a year in the back, wrangling back and forth, and things have heated up since Deshaun cleared the criminal aspect of some very serious allegations. But he also opened the door a little bit. You know, last year it was, all right, I'm not going to waive my no trade clause. It's Miami. That's it. That didn't work out. This time around, they're ostensibly at least off the table. He's meeting with Carolina. He's meeting with New Orleans. Cleveland is now a team he's going to meet with. He's not meeting with the Eagles. Is that the Eagles begging off completely? Or is that Deshaun Watson, for whatever reason, saying, I'm just not playing there?
Yeah, I've gotten the sense, and I don't know this for a fact, so I don't want to make it seem like it's a report, but I've gotten the sense that over the last year that the Eagles have not been on his list. And like you said, things have changed with other cities and kind of out of need. The situation has changed so much around the NFL in the last year that he didn't really have a choice. I thought it was funny that the Colts tried and the Texans shut that down pretty quickly, which I understand completely. I think the Eagles are lurking in the background here. They're going to keep an eye on it, and they're going to see what happens. It doesn't seem like they're at the front of this, but we know they've done their homework. They did their homework last year when we found out it was a possibility Watson could be dealt. And in the years since, I'm sure they haven't stopped that. I'm sure they've been keeping an eye on it. I'd say it's unlikely right now that it happens for the Eagles, but never say never in a situation like this, because look, it's a tricky situation. The allegations are still serious even without the criminal cases or without criminal charges. So it's a big undertaking for a team, for a franchise to be like, yeah, we want this guy. And so you have to keep all that in mind when you talk about it, because the football player alone is a no-brainer.
Yeah.
I mean, he's an excellent player who could still be getting better. I mean, that's how young this guy is. So it's a franchise-altering decision. So I think the Eagles are keeping an eye on it. At this point, it seems unlikely that it would happen here. And they've kind of set themselves up with that in mind, because they've talked up Jalen Hurts at every turn. Whether or not they believe in him as much as they're saying, they're certainly putting on that face, because I think they know that it's most likely he's their quarterback going into the next season.
Here's where keeping an eye on it or monitoring the situation doesn't work for me. Either you're in or you're out, and you're trying to describe him as a team that's sitting on the fence. Well, things are moving quickly here. He met with New Orleans. He met with Carolina. He's meeting with Cleveland today, and the Eagles are monitoring the situation.
Well, you can't force the kid to meet with you.
You're putting it on, and I'm asking both you guys, John, you just made the statement, but you're putting it on the kid. You say it's Deshaun Watson who said, nope, Philly, not happening. No, I'm not going there. Sorry, not happening. Why? Dave, why do you think he has said, I'll meet with New Orleans, I'll meet with Cleveland, I'll meet with Carolina. Let me see, how many of those teams made the playoffs? Oh, none. And I won't meet with Philadelphia because they did make the playoffs last year. What do you think Deshaun Watson's line of thinking is? He wants no part of Philly.
I don't know.
Yeah, okay. It could be.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for you. I mean, I don't know what you want to tell you here. It seems like that's the way it's been going. So, and I get that if you'd be frustrated by that he's an elite player and the Eagles don't seem all in for whatever reason, but that's kind of where we're at right now. I don't have a better answer than that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I wrote about Billy Boyce, and it is just speculation. But I do think, it's natural for fans to assume if a player doesn't waive a no trade clause for that particular team, they're looking at the team because that's all fans see. But more often than not, it's real life issues. I remember, and Dave will remember this, Jonathan Gannon was talking about, he had other options to be a defensive coordinator last year. And he had been in the Midwest for years, Minnesota, Indianapolis. his wife is an East Coast person. She wanted to come to East Coast. So anybody who's married knows that's a pretty easy decision. Let's go back to the East Coast. Sometimes it's weather, Miami, finances, Florida, Texas. Sometimes it is talent, but more often than not, it can be, I like the West Coast, Russell Wilson. I want to be closer to the West Coast. It's not always about, in fact, I would say, and Dave, you can chime in on this, less often than not, nobody's sitting there going, I'm breaking down the film and saying the Denver Broncos are closer than the Philadelphia Eagles. Am I off base there?
No, I think it's a lot of sometimes it can be a pre-existing relationship too.
Yeah.
Someone, they'll like talk to a player they know, like, hey, what's this like? Or they'll talk to a coach they know, which they're not supposed to do, but that'll happen too. And they'll talk to them and kind of get a feel for how things are run and what they like about the area and that kind of thing. So you're right, John. It's not all about it's not as cut and dry as this team was a playoff team last year. I want to go there, or it wasn't. I mean, there are a lot more things that go into it normally.
So do you think that it says anything about the player if he's going to make the decision based on weather, state taxes? I hear what John's saying, but it just maybe it's because I can't wrap my head around it. Because if I were in that position, which, oh, by the way, my athletic skills are long gone and were never that good to begin with anyway, I'd want to be a winner. Isn't that why you get into the sport, to try and be a winner?
Yeah, if you believe in yourself enough, you're going to be a winner wherever you go.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's the mindset.
Yeah. And people
know what I mean?
Like money, Jody. People do like money.
Yeah, Jody, that's like.
But in this case,
Jody, let me ask
money's
you something.
same
Let me ask you something. Are you someone who accuses folks of ring chasing?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
So
So
I applaud people who ring chase. That's what it's supposed to be all about, is trying to win championships. That's why you get into leagues. That's why you play the games to try and win. I always applaud people who try and get together and do what it takes to get yourself a ring.
Okay, if you're Deshaun Watson, though, you're thinking, I'm guessing, and a lot of this is us putting ourselves in the shoes of someone we've never met, so it's tough. But you're what, a 26-year-old guy who's maybe one of the top 5 best quarterbacks in the world. If I'm him, I'm probably thinking, I'm going to go wherever I go, and I'm going to win there. And I'm going to build a team around me that can win. So trying to glom onto another team because I think they have a better shot of winning might not be in my thought process.
But not as certainly splashy, but there was another Eagles move, and we'll shift back to the defensive side of the ball. Alex Singleton, not tendered, scheduled to be a restricted free agent, but just over $2.4 million, I think, is the rights of first refusal tender, Dave. So that's a lot for a backup linebacker. It's pretty evident by this decision that the Eagles considered Alex Singleton a backup linebacker now. Should they have? I mean, they tried to get Davion Taylor in the lineup. Tremendous athleticism until he got hurt. Very raw player. TJ played great. I don't think anybody's going to doubt him any longer. Well, I shouldn't say that because people will because of his pedigree, but played really well last season. Howie, I think, mentioned that in Indianapolis. Surprised at all Alex Singleton did not get tendered?
No. I kind of thought this was the way it was going to go for him. And it's tough because Singleton, I think everyone likes him a lot, and he gets everything out of what he can do. You know what I mean? He plays with his hair on fire, which I think hurt him in the beginning of last season because playing with your hair on fire in the type of defense they were running at the time put him in harm's way. He's the type of player on your roster who's a special teamer and can fill in as a backup. I think having him as your starting linebacker probably isn't the best. And I know he racked up a ton of tackles. I think he had 137 last year, 120 the year before. So he's a tackling machine, but it takes more than that. I think he's a somewhat limited player. And that's not a knock on him because I really do like Alex Singleton. I think he's a good player you want to have on your team, but ideally in a more limited role and not making $2.43 million. So if he doesn't get a good contract elsewhere, I could see them bringing him back for a cheaper price. I think that's still on the table.
That's what I hope happens because I like the kid for one reason coming off last year. He was their starter. He got supplanted. He got back into the starting lineup because of injury, and he actually got better as the season went on. A lot of guys would mope. A lot of guys would be ticked off that they had that job taken from. He played like Alex Singleton. He still got replaced. Why? Because they wanted to get Davion Taylor on the field because he was a draft pick. And he still went back in and played better in the second half than he did in the first half. That's the kind of guy I want to have on my team. All right, so if they're not going to offer a contract to Singleton, Nate Herbig on the offensive line, same question. He's a backup, $2.5 million. Is that too much? Do you think they're going to tender Nate Herbig?
He's the one guy. So the four restricted free agents, Singleton, Boston Scott, Greg Ward, Nate Herbig. If I had to pick one of those guys who I think they're going to tender, it would be Herbig, just because they value that backup offensive lineman position so much. And he's played a lot in the last few years. He's a backup, but they've really needed him. And for that price, look, it's probably a little more than ideally you'd like to spend, but I think he's the guy who's worth it of that bunch, given how much they value that position over especially linebacker and running back, which are generally cheaper. So I think he's the one guy that they might tender. The other three, I'm thinking they won't tender them, and then they'll kind of monitor it and see if they can't bring it back for a little cheaper.
All right. At D Zangaro NBCS, that's where you can follow Dave on Twitter. Read him, NBCsports.com/Philadelphia. Is Haason Reddick a steal for the Eagles? Dave wrote about it yesterday. Make sure you check that out. Last one for me, since we went down that Herbie route, Dave, who's going to be the starting right guard for the Philadelphia Eagles?
The way I look at it, I think, and I don't think this is defined yet because I think they're still open to moving Landon Dickerson, which is something I would not do. I look at that left side of the line with Mailata and Dickerson, and I think, I mean, that could be together for 10 years, and that could end up being two Pro Bowl players out there. So I wouldn't move that. Right now, I'd say Isaac Seumalo, who is a solid player. He's struggled with injuries. It's funny, in this town, people still think he's not a good player because
Stoutland loves him.
A while ago, he was not a good player, and he's still not great, but he's a solid starter when he's healthy. The problem's been he hasn't been healthy, and he's coming off that list, Frank. But if he's ready to go, I'd plug him in at right guard. I think he has the ability to pretty much play any position on the line, so I wouldn't worry about him flipping sides that much. I'd start him there, and if for some reason he's not healthy or he can't go, then it will be Jack Driscoll.
Driscoll, Herbig, the Eagles that's the best depth position they have on the entire team is offensive line. And that's why I'm not sure they're going to give Herbig the offer because I know how much they value the position, but I also think they love their depth there and they might be able to get him back for slightly below the number that the tender is. All right, last one. I'm talking quarterback again, but I'm not talking starter. Will Gardner Minshew be traded? A lot of smoke about the Colts being interested in bringing him in. The Colts didn't learn their lesson from Carson Wentz. They're going to take another Eagle quarterback off their hands and pay a premium price for him, which I would consider a fourth-round pick. Are the Eagles actually going to do that?
Yeah, I mean, if someone wants to trade for him and they get a good pick for him, and I think it would be some sort of conditional pick so they can, conditional 4 maybe. Yeah. I mean, I would do that in a heartbeat.
But then you need a backup, Dave.
That's the problem. Joe Flacco's available. No, I think that is a problem, man. We know that they care about the backup quarterback. We talk about positions they value. They do value that, which is why it would take a pretty good offer to get Gardner Minshew. But if you can get a potential, if you get a conditional 4 that can turn into a 3, I mean,
that's
you got to do it. It's tough to turn down. And we'll figure out the backup spot. That's the way you handle it. And I think it's possible. We'll see how the quarterback market shakes out. There's before that trade would happen, I think, if the Colts are going to trade for Gardner Minshew, it probably means they've struck out in other areas. So let them try to do what they can. And then if they can't, Eagles can be sitting back waiting and say, hey, we have Gardner here for you, and we'll accept the trade. So I don't think that's something that's going to happen imminently, but yeah, I think it's possible.
If the Steelers are ready to say we're going to war with Mitch Trubisky, all of a sudden Gardner Minshew as a starting quarterback doesn't look as outrageous as it may have. Dave, great stuff. Appreciate it whenever you come on. Thanks for joining us today. We'll get you back on before the draft. Appreciate it, bud.
All right, take care, guys.
Thanks, Dave.
Dave Zangaro from NBC Sports Philly here with us on Birds 365.